It's basketball time, and Biz Talk Today TV has all the answers for you. Who is excited? I know we're excited because today is Handicap Hustle, and I have the handicapper from Las Vegas. Even though he says he's not a handicapper, we know that he is. His name is Richard Frazier. Richard, thanks for joining us today on Handicap Hustle.
Thanks, Todd. Good to be here. Sounds like you've got a little March Madness yourself.
Hell yeah, you got that right. Well, my team, the University of Maryland, is not in the tournament this year. Unfortunately, I'm not exactly sure what happened with four starting seniors, but that's a whole other story for another time. But I see you're wearing the Carolina blue today. I'm going to guess they must be your favorite, but we'll get into that later on. But I got to say, Richard, the town of Las Vegas has got to be busting this week with the NCAA tournament kicking off.
Well, this is one of the biggest weekends in Las Vegas every year. Obviously, the Super Bowl was pretty big this year, but yeah, the first week of the NCAA tournament where you have games being played Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and the most amount of games being played. This first weekend is definitely huge here in Vegas.
I bet. So I gotta say, there's so many people out there, so much excitement. People are gambling. They're going to be traveling to all these destinations to watch their favorite team play. But there are some teams that were left out. And I know you have some very strong opinions about this. Tell the audience, what are you thinking? I mean, St. John's? I mean, what the hell? Where do we go from here? But you started off for me.
Well, yeah, the problem is that in a lot of these smaller conferences in basketball, there's only one team that's going to come out of it, one team that has the resume to come out of it. If they get upset during the conference tournament, then they're essentially getting two teams in the tournament. That means that another deserving team from another conference is not getting in, including one of my teams, the Pitt Panthers.
The Pitt Panthers. That's from ACC territory.
Yeah, Pitt finished fourth in the regular season in the conference. They got beat by North Carolina in the semifinals of the ACC tournament, went toe to toe with them for 3/4 of the game, and they don't get a bid. But Pitt's not the only team. I mean, Indiana State, St. John's, Providence, Seton Hall, Oklahoma, Indiana, Memphis, Ole Miss, all these teams have a legitimate gripe of not getting in the tournament.
Yes.
But it's all because of a team winning a conference championship that didn't deserve it.
Well, whoa. They didn't deserve it. Of course they deserved it. They won the tournament. Those are the rules. So now they have the automatic bid. They get in. Now they have a chance to play for the NCAA championship. I mean, that is the spirit of the tournament. I see what you're saying, but that's almost like saying, okay, a team that's 8-8 in the NFL that gets a wild card doesn't deserve to win the Super Bowl. And there's some of those teams.
Yeah, you're right. That was a poor choice of words on my part. But, essentially what we're doing is, and the same thing happens in football. We've seen it this past year, but football is expanding their playoff format. But, we play a regular season. We play 15 to 19 conference games a season. And, you go into a conference tourney where you're playing 3 or 4 night games consecutive, and you lose one of these games, and it could spell the end for you. And it just doesn't seem right, which I think may lead to an expansion of the NCAA basketball tournament.
I gotta say, I'm not a big fan of that because it devalues the regular season. I mean, how great. I mean, think about it. Over the years, when you had some amazing matchups, I mean, even in the 70s, where the conference champion was the only team that went in, there weren't at large bids. NC State versus Maryland in 74. I mean, this goes back so many other times. And how many, remember during what was it, in the 90s, you had the 1-versus-2 matchup with Arkansas, where Lee Mayberry and Todd Day were playing. And I mean, they were great teams, and it was so exciting to watch some of these games, or Duke and UNC in the regular season. If you start expanding the tournament, it devalues those games. It's almost like they're just scrimmage games. You're just playing for the tournament. And I think that that's a sad thing. I mean, I know in one sport, lacrosse. I love talking about lacrosse, Richard. I know you know it. That's all I talk about. But in lacrosse, you don't have a lot of teams that make the NCAA. So therefore, you have a lot of teams that are left out. But it makes every game special. And that's like that in college football as well. Once you start expanding it, it devalues that regular season. And I think it's a slippery slope. I see what you're saying. But let's move on from all this. Strong opinions, obviously. And for those that are watching and listening to this show, definitely check out Richard's Twitter account. It's Phrase Wins, because I gotta say, he has strong opinions. He loves to throw them out there, and he is not afraid to tell you how it is. So you definitely have a chance to banter back and forth with him. But let's start talking about some of those Cinderellas coming up. Big games kicking off on Thursday at 12:10 Eastern time. What do you think? What are your Cinderella picks? Because everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Well, let me classify what I think is a Cinderella. I think a Cinderella is a team that's a double-digit seed or lower. And so that means anything from a 10 to a 16. Now, upon looking and examining the bracket that came out, I see four teams that have a good shot at being a Cinderella.
Let's go, baby. Give them to us.
Okay. So if I look at Drake had a very good regular season. They draw Washington State in the first round. If they win that game, they have to play. Chances are the number 2 seed Iowa State. But based on the odds, I think Drake has a decent chance of becoming a Cinderella team. Moving down into the West bracket.
Let me clarify that. So you're saying Drake is going to beat Washington State in the first round game?
I'm saying they have a good chance. I'm not
Okay.
saying that I'm laying my money on it. I'm just saying that keep an eye out for these Cinderellas. That's what
Okay.
I'm doing.
No worries. Okay.
Cinderella stories make the tournament. Who
They
doesn't love a
do,
good
don't they?
Cinderella story?
Listen, do you remember back in the golly, I think it was a mid 2000s or so, and George Mason, he was a double-digit seed team, should never have been in the tournament. One of those stories that we were just talking about. They're in the tournament, and one by one, they end up beating what they beat UConn, they beat UNC, they went to the Final Four. George Mason in Northern Virginia made it to the Final Four. I mean, truly a remarkable story. And you're right. Everybody wanted them. They were saying, rah, rah, this is great. St. Peter's a couple of years ago, another team that did the same thing. Everybody loves that story. And it's such a great American story as well. So I definitely know what you mean. We'll see how it turns out. But what else do you have?
Okay, I also have New Mexico as a good shot at getting to the Sweet 16. They play Clemson in the first round.
Woo!
Clemson, tough pick for the tournament. Again, one of the reasons my Pitt team didn't make it, but I think New Mexico could beat Clemson, and if they win that game, then they'll have to play Baylor in the next round on.
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You're saying Colgate is not going to beat Baylor? You're already giving the win to Baylor? Come on!
Well, if you want to go with those 100,000 to 100 odds, then go ahead with Colgate against Baylor. I don't see it happening, but I do think that New Mexico showed something in winning the Mountain West, and they could get there again. These are fairy tales.
Okay,
Okay.
all right, all right, all right. I
The
like
other
it though.
one is in the same region, the West region. That's Nevada. I think Nevada could beat Dayton.
You know what? I have to agree with that. I mean, that Mountain West Conference has 6 teams, top to bottom. They did great this year. They have a lot of great teams. You almost have to think that they are actually seated too low right now. And
Yeah.
it's probably unjust, but probably because of the conference that they're in. That seems like an easy one to think about. But I'm sure at the end of the day, a lot of people are thinking, you know what? Are they really a Cinderella? But I see what you're saying. You're just going by the seed number.
Yeah, they're the 10th seed, but if they win that first game, then they're going to be up against either Arizona or Long Beach, which is an interesting story. Long Beach was all set to fire their coach before the conference tournament started. They go on to win the Big West Conference tournament, and now they're dancing. So
Yeah, the guy
um,
went from zero to hero, just like
yeah,
that.
exactly. And then the other school I think has a chance is NC State. NC State drew Texas Tech in the first round. I think they can win that game. Now, chances are, if they win that game, they're going to have to play Kentucky. But again, Cinderella story could happen.
Flashback to 1983. I mean, how great of a story is this? Houston back then was the best team in the country. This year, they're the best team in the country, arguably speaking, of course. Here, Houston loses their conference championship on Saturday, and NC State, every game they have to win. They do, and they knock off the Tar Heels on Saturday. Just a great story. I know Jim Valvano is looking down. He's smiling. It's a wonderful story. I would have to go with NC State as well, just out of emotion.
Right.
So that's awesome. Listen, let's leave it on this block right now, Richard, because coming up after the break, we are going to be talking about your picks, Richard. We're going to put you on the hot seat, because we got to know what you're thinking, where we should be gambling, what should we be picking. That's what everybody really wants to know, and that's why they're tuning in today to Handicap Hustle. So please stay with us. We're going to be right back, right after the break.
Ready to up your game and learn more about the thrilling world of sports betting? Introducing Double Down with Breslow, the ultimate podcast about the business of sports gambling. Join me, James Breslow, and a long list of expert guests as we dive into the art and science of the sports betting industry. Evolving regulations, technology enhancements, and the meteoric rise in the number of players makes this sector the fastest growing and most intriguing in the world. Unlock the business secrets from many of the industry's most recognizable C-suite executives, including famous odds makers and influencers. Every episode of Double Down with Breslow is packed with insider tips, deeply skilled analysis, and in-depth discussions. Don't miss out on the ultimate resource for mastering the business of sports betting. Listen to Double Down with Breslow on the Evergreen Podcast Network or wherever you listen to podcasts. That's Double Down with Breslow, the business of sports betting podcast.
Welcome back to Handicap Hustle. I am your host, Todd Schoenberger. I am with my friend Richard Frazier, who is I would say, the gambling extraordinaire out in Las Vegas. I mean, where else? We went right to Las Vegas and got the subject matter expert, the guy of all guys who knows about this stuff, who knows college basketball. I mean, they made a movie about him. I mean, 2 for the money. Matthew McConaughey. I got to say, Matthew McConaughey, I don't know, it's a big reach. They should have just had you play yourself in that show, in that movie, but whatever. I know a lot of our audience right now will be tuning into that movie right now because they want to know what's up with you. But I got to say, Richard, what do you think? Dark horses. Give us some dark horses in each region right now before we get to your picks.
Okay. In the East, for the dark horse, I have the BYU Cougars. I'm a big fan of BYU. This was BYU's first year in the Big 12, so they are battle tested. And coming in as a 6th seed, I think they have a good chance to make the Final Four.
Okay.
We'll move down to the
Hold on,
West.
I gotta tell you real quick. BYU doesn't drink. That's a dry campus. And I collect shot glasses. So every time I would travel, I would visit a college campus. I always had to buy a shot glass. I go into the BYU bookstore. I go up to the counter. I said, "Hey, I want to buy a shot glass." Of course, they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And they said, "We don't call them shot glasses here. We call them toothpick holders."
Yeah,
So I have a BYU toothpick holder.
Welcome to Provo, Utah.
There you go. All right, go to the next dark horse.
Okay, down in the West, I'm looking at St. Mary's out of the West Coast Conference. Always one of my favorite teams. My wife is named that. She's a saint, so God bless her. St. Mary's is perennially battling Gonzaga for that West Coast Conference every year. I think St. Mary's has a strong team, as good as, if not better than, Gonzaga this year. So
Yeah.
I look for St. Mary's to have a shot to make the Final Four out of the West.
I think you're right about that. I see them getting at least to the Sweet 16. I think they will be playing Alabama in the second round. And Alabama, I think, is seated too high right now. But we'll see. Was it because they seem to struggle down the stretch? But we'll see. You never know. Never know what's going to happen. But I have to agree. I like that pick.
Yeah, in the South, I'm going with Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. Uh, Wisconsin drew James Madison in the first round, and all I'm hearing about is watch out for James Madison. Everybody likes these 5-12 matchups. They think that those are prime matchups for upsets, but I don't see this one happening. I see Wisconsin handling James Madison, and I see Wisconsin having a chance to go to the Final Four.
I love James Madison. I love the color of the schools. It's purple, which being a big Ravens fan, of course, I'm always going to root for purple. Plus, they're right there in Virginia, and being from Maryland, I was very familiar with James Madison. I have to say, though, Wisconsin, these guys are like trees. They're big. They're huge. I mean, you can't dribble into the lane with these guys. I mean, they're monsters in Wisconsin. So I have to say, I would have to give them the favor. But Wisconsin would have to face Duke, because I'm sure Duke's going to get past Vermont in that second round. And Duke is solid. I mean, top to bottom with talent. But they are young. That's the only thing. They're not battle tested. So that's their only vulnerability. But that would be a one hell of a matchup with Duke and Wisconsin.
And Pitt did beat Duke this year. Just wanted
That's
to
right.
point it out.
That's right.
And then down in the Midwest, the last dark horse, I'm going with Gonzaga. So I have two West Coast Conference teams. You know, Gonzaga didn't play their best ball through the first part of the regular season, but they seem to have put it together as the season went on, as they always do come tournament time. And I see Gonzaga as the dark horse in the Midwest.
I love Gonzaga. It's a Jesuit college. I love it. They have so many great things going for them. I have to say they will be prepared, though. I mean, they might have been floundering a little bit down the stretch, but that is a team that you definitely want to keep your eye on, and as we proceed through the tournament. All right, let's move on from here. Let's get to what everybody's tuning in for. Your picks, Richard Frazier. You're on the hot seat. I'm asking you right now, who do you see winning this whole thing? Give us some picks. Tell us what we need to look for.
Well, in terms of winning the whole thing, it's hard to say this far out. Obviously, UConn is the hands down favorite at this point. But let's just look at Thursday and Friday's games. The first game I'm looking at is BYU. Of course, that was one of my dark horses I picked. Now they're 9-point favorites over Duquesne. Now that's a Pittsburgh school as well, so I have some sentiment towards Duquesne, but the problem is that from a matchup standpoint, they really don't. And so I like BYU minus the 9 points in that game.
Yeah, and Duquesne, right there in the town of Oakland, right outside of Pittsburgh. That's where all the colleges are.
That's
So much.
where,
It's
yeah,
a great college town right there. So yeah, I'm rooting for Duquesne, but I agree that's going to be a tough one.
yeah. The second game I'm looking at is another one of my dark horses. It's Gonzaga. Now they're playing McNeese State. I'm surprised that the line's only 6 points, which scares me a little bit, but we're probably going to lay that 6 and take Gonzaga. The third game we're looking at is Kansas against Samford. Kansas favored by 7.5. Yeah, I'm looking at all chalk at this point, but that's where I think the money is right now.
Hold it, back up. You're saying you're picking Kansas in that
Yes.
game. You're
Yes.
even with the points.
Yes. Laying
Yeah.
the 7.5.
Yeah, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. I got to agree with you on that one. I mean, I could see Kansas actually rolling with this thing all the way into Championship Monday. We'll see how it plays out. But Kansas has that pedigree. You know, it's a championship pedigree. It's hard not to
Exactly.
pick them for the Final Four at least.
Exactly. And the other game that we're currently looking at is Alabama -9.5 versus College of Charleston. College of Charleston has been to the dance before. They're no strangers to this. But whether or not they really deserved to be in this year is questionable. I look for Alabama to win this game pretty easily, double digits.
Yeah, we'll see. I remember Maryland playing College of Charleston many years ago in the NCAA tournament. I think Maryland won. It was so long ago, but I got to say, I mean, when you have teams that have been to the tournament, it might have been decades ago, you at least have that's your culture. You have a winning culture. I do think they're going to give Alabama a tough road, tough game. That's going to be a fun one to watch, though. That could be one of those. It could be an upset alert moment for the country to really tune in. So, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. So those are your four picks. You don't want to give a prognostication on your championship. Oh, give
I
me. What do
have
you got?
one more.
You're teasing me. This is showbiz. You were Mr. Showbiz out there in Las Vegas. What do you have?
I have one more game that we are already down on. It's the only game we've bet already.
Let's
And
go.
I've yet to reveal that. We have laid our money on San Diego State -6.5 versus UAB. That's the only game that I'm sure about right now.
Are you sure? So you're saying San Diego State over UAB in the first round?
I am.
Holy moly, that's big time. Yeah, the Aztecs. We'll see what happens there on that one. I love that pick. We'll see. I mean, I gotta say, I mean, the tournament, there's so many players that really make each team good. It's not like it used to be where the blue bloods were out there. I mean, you really have a number of key players that are on each one of these teams. So it's going to be really challenging to really pick and try to find, the perfect bracket, so to speak, which I don't know what the odds are, but I'm sure it's quite a bit.
It's never
That is
happened.
Yeah, that right. I know, and I don't see it as the years go on, and you have more teams with, they're spreading the talent top to bottom. It's really tough to find those favorite teams. It's not like John Wooden's UCLA, is what I'm saying.
Well,
So
yeah, with the transfer portal being what it is now, you get players
exactly,
jumping teams.
exactly. And all sports are like that, though. You could be in the transfer portal for any sport in college, and you see that a lot. I know I keep saying about lacrosse. You see that in lacrosse a lot with so many teams that have talent spread out, and it really does help the overall team and obviously the sport as well. So,
Well,
but
and especially in basketball, where so many players that have great seasons are one and done.
that's true. That's true. Well, hopefully the Maryland Terrapins will tap into that transfer portal, or maybe we'll have some excitement for next year. But Richard, we're going to leave it there because we got another show next week. It's the follow-up show, everybody. Everyone will want to tune in because we're going to put Richard on the hot seat. We're going to know how these 5 picks played out, and we'll have some fun with that and lots of banter. But enjoy the games, Richard. I got to say, you're probably going to be right there at the sports bar. I could just see you. You got your blazer on. You're there with Matthew McConaughey. You probably have Al Pacino, Rene Russo. You're smoking cigars, having a bourbon, and you're watching these games, having a good time. So definitely envy you being out there. So definitely enjoy it.
Well,
Any final thoughts, Richard?
catch a plane and come out and join me. I'll show you a good time.
I love that. That's awesome. We may just do that. We're going to take this handicap hustle for a road show. But listen, until next week, enjoy the games. Enjoy the first 2 rounds. Take a look at what Richard has to say. And tune in next week for the report card. But we're going to leave it there. So on behalf of Richard Frazier, I am Todd Schoenberger. Thank you once again for joining us on Handicap Hustle. We'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you.
Excellent.
I want you to smash that like button.